Namah Shivaya.
Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharyamadhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana
Om
Bhavatu
Sahana Bhavatu
Sahanau
Sahana
Bhunaktu
Bhunaktu
Sahaviryam
Mahaviryam
Karavavahai
Karavahai
Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma
Tejasvinavadhinastu
Vidvishavahai.
Mahavai
Om
Om
Shanti
Shanti
Shanti Shanti.
Shanti.
Om Tat Sat, Om Namah Shivaya. Good morning, everybody.
That's it.
Om Tat Sat.
So we'll carry on to the next verse, which is verse number 65. Can anybody see the recording button? Is it recording?
Yes, Acharya.
Yes,
Recording.
Acharya.
All right, okay. So verse number 65. Sarvopi vyavaharastu
Sarvopi
Sarvopi
vyavaharastu
Vyavaharastu
brahmana kriyate janaihi
brahmana
Brahmana Kriyate Janaihi
jnananna vijananti
Ajnanam
vijananti
Vijananti
hrideva hi ghatadikam.
hrideva
Hridevahi Ghatadikam.
So the idea being conveyed is that you can't really get away from Brahman. I'm muting everybody. Somebody's still talking. Okay, all right. The idea being conveyed is that you cannot get away from Brahman anywhere. Wherever you look at the world, you are looking at Brahman alone. Just like whenever you handle an ornament, you are handling gold alone. Whenever I lift the chair, I am lifting wood alone and not the chair. So this is what is being said here. He says, sarvo api vyavaharaha. Every transaction that you do. Okay, now you can add here. Who do you transact with? You transact with the world, with people, with instruments in the world. So every transaction that you do with the world, Brahmana kriyate janaihi. Everybody does with Brahman only. All transactions are done with Brahman only. Right? Now, it means that you are perceiving Brahman, handling Brahman, because you are Brahman. All the time, there is Brahman available to you. You need not change anything. Only an understanding is needed. Right? In every experience that you have, what is common?
Sat existence and consciousness.
Yes, consciousness is there, existence is there, and sometimes Ananda is also there. So, if you don't understand that, Ajnanat na vijananti, this fact is not known because of Ajnanam only. What fact? That actually I don't need to look for Brahman. Whatever I do, when I open my eyes, there is Brahman. When I close my eyes, there is Brahman. Anything that I pick up, there is Brahman. Anybody I talk to is Brahman. Anybody who talks to me is Brahman. One doesn't understand this because of Ajnanam alone, because of lack of study of Vedanta. So Ajnanat na vijananti. It is due to ignorance alone that you are not aware of this fact. And what is the fact? Mridevahi ghatadikam. The clay alone is the pot. And therefore from this you have to derive. The universe alone is nothing but Brahman. And that is the fact which I have to assimilate. Okay. Now, the next verse, we will chant verse number 66. Please unmute yourself. Karya karanata nityam
कार्यकारणता
नित्यम्
आस्ते घटमृदयोर्यथा
आस्ते घटमृदोर्यथा
आस्ते घटमृदयोर्यथा
आस्ते घटमृदोर्यथा
तथैव श्रुतियुक्तिभ्याम्
तथैव
श्रुतियुक्तिभ्याम्
पञ्चब्रह्मणोरिह
प्रपञ्चब्रह्मणोरिह
The same idea is talked about. Now, he says that the substance is Brahman alone, right? How do you establish? You have to establish that the cause is nothing but the product. The product is nothing but the cause. This is called Karya Karana Sambandha, the connection between the Karanam and the Karyam. Karanam is the cause, Karyam is the product, and Sambandha is the cause-effect relationship. And once I establish this relationship, this particular Sambandha, what will I understand? That the substance is the Karanam alone, and the product has no substance, it is only a name and a form. So this idea is being conveyed here. Yatha ghatamrudoho karya karanata nityam aste. So yatha ghata mrudoho. Ghata is the pot, mrudu is the clay. Yatha ghata mrudoho. Just as between the clay and the pot, Karya Karanata Nityam Aste. The relationship of Karya Karanam is always there. The Nityam is important. There is no time when there is no relationship between the product and the cause. Karya Karanata is product and the cause. The relationship is what? Nityam Aste. It is permanent. And because that is so, the Karanam, the clay, will be inherent in the pot all the time. And therefore, the substance is clay, and the pot is only a name and form. It is only, there is a form which is nothing actually but the clay itself. And it is that particular form that you are giving a name. Therefore, the pot has no existence apart from the clay, because the form of the pot is what? It is a clay only, which has been made into a particular form. And the name is what? The name is a label given to clay in that form. Therefore, pot has only verbal existence. It is as good as non-existent. The clay alone exists. The substance is clay. Pot is only name and form. Having said that, then he says, tatha eva, tatha eva. In that same manner, prapanchaha brahmanoriha. It is the same case in the case of Brahman and Prapancha, the world. Between the world and Brahman, the same relationship, which is what? Karya, Karanata exists. When? Nityam, always. Okay, now in the case of the clay and the pot, I can do an experiment to find out whether the clay is clay and whether the pot is clay. I can use my logical or logic, I can use my eyes, I can use my scientific technology, everything I can do, right? So Pramanam is available for me to find out that clay and pot are the same. What about in the case of Jagat and Brahman? There is no worldly Pramanam available. So he says Shruti Yuktibhyam. This knowledge you can gain only from Shruti Pramanam. And which Shruti Pramanam tells you that the world was born from Brahman?
Mandukya. Sorry,
No,
Mundaka
no,
Upanishad.
no point
Mundaka.
telling me that. I want the mantra.
The first mantra, Sambhabhuva.
Anybody? Is the first mantra correct? Most of you all have already done Upanishads, so you should be able to answer. See, any advanced text, if you want to understand, you have to remember what I've studied. Anyway, Mandukya first mantra doesn't cover. Mandukya first mantra Munduka first mantra talks about what? What was born? Okay, I'll leave it as homework. Have you? Yeah, somebody has an answer?
In Chandogya Upanishad, there is a sentence. I don't really understand this much. Saya esho animaita datmya vidvidam sarvam tat satyam sa atma.
You can, but those who have been in these classes would have done Taittiriya Upanishad, where there is a very specific, word which is called Brahma Lakshanam, specific statement. If you remember, Yathova imani bhutani jayante. What does that mean? From which all these beings are born. Yathova imani jayante. That is one very famous Shruti Vakyam from which we know that Brahman is the cause of the world. Right? So it is, and that statement goes on to say it is the cause of maintenance also, it is the cause of resolution also. So Brahman is the Srishti Karanam, Sthiti Karanam, and Laya Karanam. So this is Shastra Pramanam, right? So when he says Shruti Yukti Bhyam, there is Shastra Pramanam to indicate that Brahman is the cause. There is also logic. Yukti is logic. Now here, I think we have discussed this before. There is a difference in the logic that you use in Vedanta and the logic that we use in, let us say, science. What is the difference? It's a very basic logic which you must understand.
The data is an Atma, the data in science.
Fair enough. Would you like to explain that more?
Acharya ji, for proving the world or anything, we have the data available which we can perceive and which we can use for analysis. Whereas for proving or disproving Atma, we need to depend on only the Shabda Pramana.
Very good. So as she says, scientific logic, you use both logic. Any logic is based on observed data available. So scientific logic, when you use in science, you are taking the data available from your 5 sense organs, right? Because first of all, you perceive something. Based on that perception, then you do anuman. That's the inference you do. That is scientific logic that you use. But your 5 sense organs give you what? Give you perceptions or data of the anatma only. And therefore, in Vedanta, the subject is Atma. So you cannot use the data which is being obtained from your sense organs or by science. Because scientific data is all about Anatma. Anatma data cannot be used to make a conclusion about Atma. It is like saying that I have data from the moon and I will use that to make a conclusion about another planet. Let us say about Jupiter. So it's scientifically illogical. Same thing here. You cannot use data about Anatma to make a conclusion about Atma. Therefore, where does the data about Atma come from? It comes from the scriptures only, because scriptures is the only pramanam which talks about Atma and Brahman. Therefore, scriptural logic is based on data collected from the scriptures themselves. And this is, this has to be very clearly remembered, because you'll find a lot of people using data about anatma to try to tell you that we cannot prove atma or disprove atma, which is a fact actually. But they take that lack of proof as the proof of absence of Brahman, which is incorrect. You cannot use anatma data to make any conclusion about atma. So that has to be understood very clearly, right? Now, also, scripture says that by knowing the sambandha, the karana karya sambandha between Brahman and the world, what is that? It is the same as the clay and the pot example. So by knowing the chemical composition of the clay, you will know the chemical composition of all the pots. Similarly, by knowing about Brahman, Shastra says, you can know everything about the world. Okay. Interestingly, I was reading about a professor, a Nobel Prize winner actually, Professor Wald, W-A-L-D. He writes beautifully about consciousness. The consciousness, when I say, we mean Atma or Brahman. Okay. So he says, I'm quoting, consciousness is the essential condition for all science. Though consciousness is the essential condition for all science, science cannot deal with it. Science cannot handle consciousness. And he says this is not because consciousness is something which is within science. And he makes a very important statement. But science is within consciousness. Therefore, science is a limited territory within the much wider reality of that existence which we are conscious of. So he says consciousness itself lies outside the parameters of space and time, and that realization has an enormous consequence, because something which lies outside the parameters of space and time is not accessible to science. And of course, he ends with one quotation which is very Vedantic. He says, consciousness cannot be located, but even more, it has no location. Sounds very much like something from the Upanishads. So science is also coming around to the view that consciousness cannot really be studied. Of course, they have not yet said that consciousness is you. Okay. They have not figured out the connection between the observer and consciousness. So the observer is nothing but consciousness alone. So, coming back to our topic, we say that by knowing clay, you will know all the pots. And by knowing Brahman, you will know all the parts of the universe. So this is Shruti-based logic, saying that the universe is not separate from Brahman. And therefore remember that when you use logic in Vedanta, that logic is valid only if you accept that Shastram is the primary source of data for that logic. If you don't accept that consciousness, you will never understand. And that is why science is yet to really understand consciousness, because they try to understand that consciousness based on anatma data, which is simply not possible at all. Okay. Any questions so far?
So Acharya-ji, it's essentially understanding the clayness of the pot.
Understanding the clearness of the pot. The Brahmanness of the universe has to be understood. Okay. Now we look at verse number 67. गृह्यमाणे घटे यद्वत् मृत्तिकायाति वै बलात् वीक्ष्यमाणे प्रपञ्चेऽपि ब्रह्मैवा भाति भासुरम्. So very potent sentences. Yadvat grihyamane ghate. When you pick up a pot. So yadvat ghate grihyamane. When you pick up a pot. Mrittika ayati vai balat. Balat here is forcefully or helplessly. So yadvat grihyamane ghate. When you pick up a pot. Mrittika ayati balat. The clay also helplessly comes along. What does it mean? The beauty of the imagery. You are picking up the pot, but without any choice, you are also picking up the clay. There is no pot separate from the clay. The substance is clay alone. Right? And therefore, you have to understand this changing nature. Like you can, for example, have pots of different shapes and sizes. So this changing nature does not belong to the substance. It belongs to the pot alone. The mortality belongs to Nama Rupa, not to the substance. Similarly, for the universe, the names and forms are non-substantial. The changing nature belongs to the universe, but the substance is Brahman, Satchit Swarupaha. Right? So if you want to look at the ornament without the gold, it is not possible at all. If you want to look at the universe without Sat and Chit, it is not possible at all. Your individual experiences, sound, form, smell, all this will vary. But in and through all these experiences, what will be present? That consciousness principle, which we call Brahman, is always present. And therefore he says, Prapanche Vikshyamane api. When the world is being seen all the time, Brahmaiva abhati bhasuram. What is actually shining? Bhasuram is Brahman alone. The content is consciousness. But you are not able to focus on the content because all the sciences, they deal with the container and never with the content. Why? Why do the scientists, all the sciences, deal with the container and not with the content?
Because the
Anatma,
content is the subject.
Anatma alone.
Because you lost sight of the fact that the scientist is the content. Okay. Now we look at verse number 68. All very nice verses. Nothing very, deep, but very nicely put. Verse number 68, we will chant. Please unmute yourself. Sadaiv Atma Vishuddhosti Vishuddho Bhati Vai Sada Yathaiva Dvidha Rajjuh Jnanino Jnanino Nisham I'll just unmute her again. Right. So when you look at, the wave, let us say you're going surfing. You say, I'm riding the wave, right? The word wave is used for vyavahara, to convey a transactional idea that you are riding the wave. When you say, I am in the ocean or I am in the river, wherever you go, finally remember that it is only water, right? So ocean, rivers, waves, lakes, wells, they are all multiple names. Transactions require plurality, and you use these names to understand what? That one non-dual water, right? And therefore, when you transact in this world, you cannot use Advaitam at all. So there is a saying, Kriyat Dvaitam na karhichit. Never talk of Advaita in Kriya, in transactions. Why should you not talk of Advaita in transactions? Because there is a karta, there is a karma. All those factors of action are there. There are multiplicities embedded in every karma. So Kriya Dvaitam na karhichit. Never talk of Advaita in transactions. However, Bhavat Advaitam Sada Kuryat. Let Advaita be your attitude all the time. Let the vision be that even though transactions are being done, all transactions, the doer, the done, the transaction itself, factors of action, everything is nothing but Brahman alone. So once transactions come, they should be done. But with the knowledge that Advaita alone is the reality. So Dvaita is pursued. Dvaita cannot be avoided in this world. Dvaita is pursued because once a transaction comes, what all comes? Dharma comes, adharma comes, papa comes, punya comes, everything comes. Karma law comes. So all transactions require dharma, adharma, papam, punyam, all duality only. But if you can do them all by understanding that I, Brahman, am the non-dual reality behind all these transactions, then even though while riding the wave, you use the word wave and you say, I am surfing the wave, what is the advantage? You know that when the wave dies, wave collapses, nothing is destroyed. And similarly, you know that this body is not you. The body is subject to Shadvikara. Therefore, you can accept your body's death comfortably. The idea that your body will die will no longer make you uncomfortable. For you know that you, the Atma, can never be killed. And whatever is adhyasa cannot be immortal. Whatever is the substratum on which the adhyasa has been made, that is immortal. Seeing the substance is called pure vision. And it gives you a lot of security. Seeing the name and form is impure vision, which will give you a lot of fear. Right? So Shankara gives an example in his commentary. He says, when you look at the rope snake, there are two things you can see. One is born from knowledge, one is born from ajnana. What is the vision that you see born from ajnanam? You see the Rajju Sarpaha, the snake you see. What is the vision born from Jnanam? You see the rope. So the snake vision, it gives you fear. It gives you bondage. The rope vision, it gives you fearlessness. Right? What you are seeing is the same. However, the conclusion you are drawing is different depending upon one is jnanam, one is ajnanam. What you need is not a change in the rope. What you need is a change in your vision. Similarly, you can enjoy life as a sport once you have understood Vedanta. But for others who have not understood Vedanta, life is a struggle. The conversion of life from a struggle to a lila is because of this jnanam alone. And so he says here, Sadaiv Atma Vishuddha Asti. Atma is always pure because there is no fear cost, right? And Ashuddho Bhati Vai Sada. When it appears as Anatma, it looks as though it is impure. So correctly understood, Brahman is pure, cause for security. Incorrectly understood Brahman is Jagat, the impure Jagat, which is the cause of fear. Yeah, that's why he says, Yathaiva Rajju Bhati Nisham. So Nisham means appearance. Just as the rope appears in two ways. Jnaninaha, Ajnaninaha. For the Jnani, the rope appears as the rope. For the Ajnani, the rope appears as the snake. Therefore, one more point. Okay, as long as you accept Atma and Anatma, you are in Dvaitam only, okay? So, you're going to point out, we have to learn to point out that initially, in the initial stages of Vedanta, we said that Atma is different from Anatma. You remember chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, right? We talked in great detail about the differences. So, initially, it is necessary to bring out the Bheda, the difference between Atma and Anatma. But you have to progress to saying that really speaking, there is no Anatma at all. Anatma is just another word for Atma. Like wave, ocean are words. Water alone is Satyam. So words are many, but the substance is only one. That is the what you have to finally arrive at. Okay. Now we look at verse number 69. Let us chant. Yathaiva mrinmaya kumbha
यथैव मृण्मयः
मृण्मयः कुम्भः
तद्वद्देहोऽपि चिन्मयः
तद्वद्देहो चिन्मयः
आत्मानात्मविभागोऽयम् बुधैव क्रियते बुधैः
बुधैव क्रियते बुधैः
Okay. So, yatha eva mrinmaya kumbha. Kumbha is what? Pot. Yatha eva kumbha. Just as a pot, mrinmaya. So you can bring that in mridmaya. Mayam here is in the meaning of product, right? So mridmaya or mrinmaya means the product of clay. Therefore, yathaiva mridmaya kumbha. Actually, in understanding, you have to reverse the words. Yathaiva kumbha, just as pot, mridmaya is nothing but clay alone. Tadvad, in the same manner, dehaha api chinmaya. You understand? What does it mean?
Just as the pot is clay, the deha is chip.
Just as the pot is nothing but clay, In the same manner, the body is nothing but consciousness. So this is what I was referring to in the last verse. We are moving to the idea that there is no difference between body and consciousness. There is no difference between matter and consciousness. There is no difference between anatma and atma. So then, of course, the question will come, why are you talking about atma, anatma, viveka, which is a very important topic in Vedanta? The answer is that anatma, atma, viveka is the first stage of teaching for the beginner. First I say, Jagat, the world is there. Then I say, okay, I will add Ishvara to the world, right? And once I convince the student that world is there and Ishvara is there, then I have to tell the student that Ishvara is Srishtikartaha. And then I have to say that Ishvara is Sat-Chit Ananda Rupa, in the form of Sat-Chit Anandam. Then I tell the student that what you are seeing is Ishvara alone. And the world is given a name, Jagat. But what you are seeing is Ishvara alone. There is no difference between Ishvara and the world. So, what is the sequence? First I say, consciousness is in the body. Or rather, if you go to the very beginning, first I say there is the body. Then I say there is body and there is consciousness. These two are different. Then I say that consciousness is there in the body. And now what am I saying? Consciousness is the body itself. Right? So this is what is being said here. Atma, anatma, vibhagaha, ayam. Ayam, vibhagaha. This difference, atma, anatma, between the atma and the anatma, abuddhaihi. So that word is to be broken up. Kriyate abuddhaihi mughaiva. So kriyate abuddhaihi is stated by ignorant people. Abuddhaihi, and mudhaiva is unnecessarily being talked about by ignorant people. Right? So even Advaitins will acknowledge that these steps are different, but they are all in the nature of adhyasa only. The final apavada has to come when you negate everything and say Brahman alone is there. Nothing else is there. Universe is not there at all. You see, the teaching is now complete. What is it? What is being said? There is only Brahman, nothing else. You can think of it in any manner. You can call it your husband, you can call it your wife, you can call it your daughter, you can call it the world. But if you are a Buddhai, if you are a wise person, you know there is nothing but Brahman alone. Okay. Any questions so far? Fine. So let's look at verse number 70. We will chant. Sarpatvena yatha rajju rajatatvena shuktika
Rajatatvena shaktika
vinirnita vimudhena
vinirnita vimudhena
dehatvena tathatmata.
Dehatvena tathatmata.
So two examples are given to illustrate the points we have talked about. Yatha sarpatvena yatha rajju. Just as the sarpaha is superimposed upon the snake, or just as the rope is mistaken for the snake. One more example. Yatha rajatatvena shuktikaha. Shuktika is the shell. Just as the shell on the beach is taken as a silver coin, In the same way, tatha. Same way, tatha. Vimudhena atma dehatvena vinirnita. Vinirnita is a mistake, mistakenly or misunderstood. So, tatha vimudaha, the person who is not a viveki, who is dull, who has not understood, what does it do? Atma dehatvena vinirnita. He mistakes the Atma for the body. So Vimuda is Visheshena Muda, extremely Muda. Muda is, of course, unintelligent, so extremely Muda. Now, what is he saying? That why is the word Vimuda used? Because Vedantic teaching, the concept is not very difficult. But the assimilation of the teaching takes a lot of time because we have so many ideas about what we are, and most of the ideas are based on, not generations, thousands of births, being told all the time that you are useless, you are finite, that kind of preconceived notions have been drilled into your head. So you have a very low self-image. And therefore, to accept that I am the limitless Brahman, it takes time. So here he's saying that in spite of sitting in class for years on end, for 10, 20, 30 years, you sit in Vedanta class, you continue to take the Atma as the body. And that is why he says, Vimudhena Visheshena. He is very, very dull person. He has not understood at all. And the second line, Vinirnita Vimudena Dehatvena Tata Atmata. That is an important line. Because of what has been stated earlier, the two examples, just as a mistake takes place, what are the two mistakes? You mistake the rope as the snake, you mistake the shell as the silver because of ajnanam. In the same way, the Vimudha mistakes the Atma for the body. Now, in the next few verses, the second line is going to be just repeated. The first line keeps on changing. So, verse number 71, we will chant.
Acharya ji, may I
Yeah.
ask?
Yeah, please go ahead.
This Vimudha is that person who despite the Shraddha in Vedas has not been able to
Assimilate the fact and continues to accept the body as Atma as the body. When he says I, he means the body, or at the most he means the mind.
So
That is
what
in
can
spite of continuous exposure to Vedanta.
So what does he need to do?
More exposure. So the reasons are what? One is that Chitta-Shuddhi is not sufficient. So that needs to be done. Like if you cannot if you understand that Vedanta says that you are Brahman, and yet when you say in meditation that I am Brahman, does your mind sit up and laugh? Ha ha. What does it mean? It's not that you don't have jnana. It's that you don't have assimilation. And for that, nididhyasanam is very, very important. So you have to ask yourself, nididhyasanam, why is it? To address your mind, oh mind, why is it that you are laughing? Let me know. Answers will come up. As the answer comes up, each of those answers you have to address using Shruti. Because for you, Shruti is paramount. Shruti word cannot be questioned. Only the interpretation you can question. So perhaps your intellect has interpreted it differently. And therefore that needs to be addressed in your meditation. Yes, Kush.
Thank you.
Acharya Om, when it comes to Nididhyasanam, I remember you said that for a Vedantic, every moment is Nididhyasanam. But do you recommend us to sit particularly at one time, twice a day, or is it okay 24/7? We try to contemplate on the teaching as much as possible.
See, if you are able to contemplate on the teaching and you're able to recall the teachings in every situation. That is very good, but most of us can rarely do that, because when you are doing something else, you are invoking your karta status, right? When you're going to teach your students, you are the karta. So any worldly transactions, invoking the anatma is unavoidable. And therefore it is at the, unless you're a very advanced Vedantic, to keep track there also that I am doing something but I am Brahman. It's a bit difficult. And therefore I would recommend that everybody does this Samadhi Abhyasa, what we call, sitting in one place and focusing on the Nididhyasanam at least once a day, half an hour, 45 minutes, however much you can. And ideally twice a day. And then you can carry the impact into the rest of the transactions.
Ji Acharya ji, thank you.
Okay, verse number 71. घटत्वेन यथा पृथ्वी
घटत्वेन यथा पृथ्वी
पठत्वेनैव तन्तवः
तन्तवः
विनिर्णीता विमूढेन
विनिर्णीता विमूढेन
मोहत्वेन तथात्मता.
देहत्वेन तथात्मता.
So more examples. Yatha Katatvena Yatha Prithvi. Just as the clay is known as the pot, what does it say that? Because you are focused on the Nama Rupa. Being focused on the Nama Rupa, your focus is taken away from the clay, the substance of the pot. So focusing on the Nama Rupa dilutes the focus on the substance. The second example is also the same. Yatha patatvenaiva tantavaha. Patha is what?
The cloth,
The cloth,
Cloth. Tantava is what?
the thread.
The thread. Right. So therefore, similarly, when you focus on the cloth, you are missing the fact that it is the thread actually. You are looking at the thread, but you see the cloth. You're looking at the Nama Rupa, you fail to see the substance. So this is what is said here. And similarly, he says, Vinirnita Vimodena Dehatvena Tatatpata. Because you are focusing on the body, you fail to see the Atma. Very simple example. The next one is also the same. We will chant verse number 72. Kanakam Kundulatvena
कनकं कुण्डलेन
Tarangatvena Vaijalam
तरङ्गत्वेन वैजलं
Vinirnita Vimudhena
विनिर्णीता विमूढेन
Dehatvena Tathatmata.
देहत्वेन तथात्मता.
Same idea. Kanakam, the gold, Kundalatvena is mistaken for the ornament. Kundalam, the earring. Right? Why is it mistaken? Because you are focusing on the Nama Rupa. And therefore you miss the substance, the gold. Similarly, Tarangatvena Vaijalam. You look at the name and the form of the water, which is Tarangaha. Taranga is wave. So you are looking at the wave, you are focusing on the movement and the name and the form, and therefore you do not understand that actually Vaijalam, it is only water. Same idea is being conveyed. Whenever you focus on the name and the form, there is a likelihood that you will lose focus on the substance, and therefore Vinirnita Vimodena, Dehatvena tathatmata. I'm not explaining that. So we go to the next verse. Similar one, we'll chant. Purushatvena vai sthanu.
पुरुषत्वेन वै स्थाणो
Jalatvena marichika.
जलत्वेन मरीचिका
Vinirnita vimudhena.
निर्णीता विमूढेन
Dehatvena tathatmata.
देहत्वेन तथात्मता
So two more examples. Purushatvena vai sthanu. The broken piece of wood or the stump of a tree, a post, wooden post. Sthanu is the wooden post or the cut stump of a tree. Purushatvena is mistaken for a person. Why is it mistaken for a person? Because you are focusing on the form, and the form looks like that of a person. You have missed the reality, the substance, which is the wooden post. Another example is given, Jalatvena marichika. The hot sand in the desert is mistaken to be what? Jalam, the mirage water. Right? The mirage water is seen, but you miss the idea that it is the sand alone. That there is only sand and there is no water. Right? And you can also extend this, you have so many individual likes and dislikes. You project so many things. They are not really there. Because of those projections, we have sufferings in our lives. Similarly, vinirnita vimudhena dehatvena tathatmata. One idea from all these examples is what? By looking, don't draw conclusions. What should you do before you draw a conclusion?
Inquire.
Inquire. Inquiry alone can give you the right conclusion. Okay, let's look at verse number 74. Another example. Grihatvenaiva kashthani
गृहत्वेनैव काष्ठानि
खडत्वैनैव लोहता खड्गत्वेन गै लोहता.
खड्गत्वेनैव लोहता
So खड्गत्वेनैव lohata.
खड्गत्वेनैव लोहता
Vinirnita vimudhena
विनिर्णीता विमूढेन
dehatvena tathatmata.
देहत्वेन तथात्मता
So again, a very nice example. Kasthani. Kashtha is what?
Wood.
Logs of wood. Okay, a lot of logs of wood. So he says there are lots of logs of wood over there. What do you mistake it for? Grahatvenaiva. You think it's a house. What is the example? It's of a wooden cabin or a wooden house. When you analyze, you will see there is nothing but several logs of wood arranged in a particular shape, and that shape you call a house. Right? And khadgatvenaiva lohata. So loha is steel over here, not iron. Refined iron, so steel. So when this iron is melted and forged into a particular shape, it becomes a weapon. Khadagatvenaiva. It becomes the sword. Right? And if you look at the sword, from one end of the sword to the other end of the sword, it's nothing but that loha only, that steel only. But you think it is a sword and you use it for as an armor or as a weapon in your wars. Similarly, Vinirnita vimudena dehatvena tathatmata. Okay. Any questions? We'll stop with this for today. These examples are good, to help us assimilate the idea. So these examples can be thought about in your Nididhyasana. When I look at wood, when I look at a house, what does and in the modern days, we don't have wooden houses, at least most of us don't. So you can replace that example with, let us say, bricks or cement. So you can say that when I inquire, I find that my house is nothing but steel and cement. But they're all put together in a particular way. So I call it a house or a flat, something. This kind of inquiry is very necessary to understand what actually is the truth. And that's what it means. Only inquiry will reveal the substratum. Right? You can't go by perception alone.
Acharya, this is also a part of Vairagyam, right? To see the thing as the way it is.
Vairagyam can arise only out of the inquiry. When you see that it is not what you thought it was, then only Vairagyam can arise.
Because ironically, we are looking for a house, and now it makes me so happy to see the way this way, because it's like trap of emotions.
No, I mean, see, it's not that you don't need a house. Okay, you need a house because it's necessary for you. Cold is there, rains are there, summer is there. But give it the right amount of importance. It is a house. It costs money. It's a house. It's necessary for me. But I don't need to be attached to it. Yes, Lataji.
Acharya? Sorry.
So,
Acharya?
Acharya, is the same way we look even at relationships?
Of course.
I mean, well, body, I understand, it will
Yes.
anyways go.
Yeah,
Even relationships, for that matter, we have to look at it the same way.
absolutely. Because relationships are between body and body only. So the biggest
But
problems
there
that you
is
have
also
is,
an emotional attachment, isn't it?
I'm not saying no. Emotion belongs to whom? Atma or the mind?
Mind,
Are you the Atma or are you the mind?
Atma.
Then accept the fact that the mind is there, the mind will have emotions. Accept the fact that relationships will go away because bodies are subject to Shadvikara. So when bodies go away, do you go away?
No.
That's the Nidhyasana. Nowhere am I saying emotions are not important. Right? A very often interpretation of Vedanta is that it makes you emotionless. It doesn't. In fact, it makes you more compassionate, having better emotions, because you know that ultimately this is a big game. And I, Brahman, am alone in this world. What you call as your relationship is nothing but you alone. That's on a different plane. But in this world, transactions have to be gone through. Emotions are there. What is the advantage of Vedanta? The fact that you know that you are not the body-mind complex ultimately makes you handle life better.
So,
Yeah,
Om
but
Acharya.
I have
thank
one
you.
question.
One minute. Let Lata finish, please.
Yeah, thank you. I got the
Okay.
point, but tough for accepting.
That is
Yeah,
why Nidhi Dhyasanam.
yes, thanks.
Yes, Rinkuji.
So, Om Acharya, at some point, one would even feel dissociated from our own emotions as well.
You have
I
to
don't know. I
you
mean,
have to
it's
define what is I.
yes. This. I mean, if I'm Brahman, and the entire world of body mind intellect sense complex of me and of everything that is existing in the world is entirely anatma, that's different from me. And similarly, therefore, the emotions that I see, the reactions that happen, whatever comes towards, whatever is there which is experienced in the physical plane or in the mental plane, is also entirely, it appears pretty unreal. I mean, it just appears like I mean, an illusion only. Does that is that where we reach to at some point in time?
See, we just finished saying that there really is no anatma separate from the atma. So whatever you are seeing is nothing but you alone with names and forms. Okay. The only thing is that what belongs to whom? Attributes belong to names and forms. Right? And therefore,
Yeah.
if you are getting emotions, they belong to that form of Brahman, which is called mind.
Yes.
Even the fact that you're recognizing that means that you're using the mind. So in Vyavaharika, it is perfectly okay to have emotions. Vedanta will help you understand that while emotions are there, you need not be overwhelmed by them. Something happens to people whom you are fond of, that is natural. It is going to happen to you also. That understanding is what makes you a stable person. So Vedanta has two. One advantage is it helps you handle life better in a more peaceful manner. And the second advantage is it takes you beyond life itself because everything is you alone. Practically, we are going to look at when you talk about these things, emotions, relationships, you're looking at the mind part of it.
Okay, thank you.
I know it's not easy to understand. It takes
Mm.
years of Nididhyasanam before you can understand this.
No, it's, I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry, but it just appears like, it's that subjective thing that
Yes,
it
but
doesn't
what?
really,
I
I
agree.
mean,
I know what you're saying that, okay, the world is not real, it's like illusion. Then what? Where do you go from there?
no, nothing. You just continue as it is. And like you mentioned, it makes you a stable person or becomes peaceful. I mean, there's nothing like to define if I'm saying that, okay, I'm peaceful. It just is.
It
And
is.
the entire scenario which is happening, whether it is in the mind or whether it is outside of my physical body, anything, it just is. It's, I mean, it's just happening.
It is
I
happening. It will continue to happen.
Yes, and it can be nightmarish, but it does not appear to be nightmarish because uh, it just is. So,
Yeah, you have
so
to
that's the
accept
whole
that
point.
whatever is there is there. See,
And it
whatever
will
comes
pass away
today,
too. And yes,
see, whatever is happening around you, whether it be good or bad, is a result of collective karma. There is no other way it could have happened. That is the understanding that you need.
and that it doesn't matter actually
And
because
ultimately, it
nothing
doesn't matter
changes.
at all. Yes. But that doesn't matter attitude should not come in when you deal with relatives or friends or whatever with the world. This is a purely internal, thing.
I don't know, Acharya, about that because once, honestly, if dissociation comes, it's not about dealing. Dealing probably comes with the fact that, if there is dharma in, and that, this is something, I think it automatically just comes, it just appears that it's not the thing that one would do. It kind of bothers one inside. So you automatically tend to do it if it feels the right thing to do. But at times the dissociation also gets pretty intense and you feel whatever is happening, let it happen, because then you can sit in one place and just keep on watching. So I don't know. I mean,
Okay,
both ways it
fine.
exists.
All right, Shubhda ji, last question.
Yes, so while explaining verse 68, sir, you quoted Kriyat Dvaitam na karhi chita bhavat advaitam sada kuryat. I just wanted to know if it is a reference from any of the Shrutis or
No,
wherever it is.
Shruti, it's probably about Subhashitam. You know, there's also one more line which says that do not ever be what you call have Dvaitam towards your guru. You know, don't go and Advaitam towards your guru. Don't go and tell him that, you and I are not different. So today, why don't you do namaskara to me instead? That is the third line. Okay. So with this, we'll stop for today. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Acharya. Thank you.
Thank you.